Joe, so before I'm going to reset the test, I'm creating this video for you that's going to have me working through your test and the questions that you missed. So you'll see me do some writing on the screen as I talk about the problem. Just watch the video, and once you've watched the video, then let me know and I will reset the test for you. So the first question you missed was number 1. It says find the unit rate for number or parts manufactured per hour if 1,630 parts are made in 6 hours, round to the nearest integer. So when you're finding unit rate, you take the number of parts, so 1,630, and you divide it by 6 hours, because you're trying to find how many parts, and I'm going to write the units here. You're trying to find how many parts per 1 hour. So it's how many times does 6 go into 1,630. So on a calculator, I'm doing 1,630 divided by 6. And I get 271.6 repeating parts per hour. Parts per hour. The little slash indicates the word per, so parts per hour. If I look over here, you can see that they round that up to 272. And now I'm going to scroll down to number 3. Number 3 says a car is driving at a speed of 60 miles per hour. What is the speed of the car in feet per minute? So this is a conversion. When you do conversions, this is how I teach them. The first thing you need to do is write what you start with. And I like to write it as a fraction. So we're going to have 60 miles, and make sure you have your units, over 1 hour. And we need to convert all the way over to feet per minute. So I'm going to put a blank here. Because this is what I want my answer in, feet per minute. So I need to convert two things. I need to convert miles to feet, and I need to convert hours to minutes. So I'm going to have two different conversions, and I'm going to draw those in here like this. So my first conversion is converting miles to feet. And you can look two places to determine what goes where, but essentially you need to know how many feet are in a mile. There are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So I'm going to put 5,280 feet up top and 1 mile on the bottom. The conversion that you use has to be a true statement. These two things have to equal each other. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. The question might be, how did you know to put feet on top and miles on bottom? You go over here to look at how you want your answer. If I want feet on top in my answer, I need feet on top in my conversion. Also, I don't want miles anymore, so miles cancel out because I have one in the top and one in the bottom, because you can think of like units canceling, kind of like on a fraction. The next conversion is hours to minutes, so I need to know how many minutes are in 1 hour. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Again, how did I know to put hour on top and 60 minutes on the bottom? If I look over here at my answer, I want minutes in the bottom. I want hour up top so that it cancels here with here. You can see the units you'll be left with then in this problem are feet per minute. So now it's just multiplication. You're going to multiply across the top and you're going to multiply across the bottom. So in a calculator, 60 times 5,280 is 316,800. Across the bottom, 1 times 1 times 60. And now we have to simplify this. So now we have to divide 316,800 divided by 60 gets us back to 5,280 feet per minute. So when you set up a conversion, I always start with what they give me, and all the way at the opposite end on the right, I put what I'm trying to get to. Then I fill in my different conversions. I'm not sure exactly how they teach it on GradPoint. Hopefully it's similar, but if not, maybe this will help seeing it kind of set up and done a different way. Number 5 is asking you to solve the proportion. When you solve a proportion, we do what's called cross multiplying. So we're going to take this w plus 4 and multiply it times 4. Then we're going to take 4w plus 6 and multiply it times 3. Thing with a proportion though, when you have expressions like w plus 4 on top, you have to use the distributive property. So essentially what you're doing is taking 4 times the whole parenthesis. So it's 4 times W plus 14. That's on one side. On the other side of the equal sign, because when you cross multiply, you have to set the two things equal to each other, we get 3 times 4W plus 6. So now we have an equation. It has the distributive property in it, so we need to distribute on both sides. 4W plus 56 equals 12W plus 18. We want to get our W's on the same side first, so we're going to subtract 4W to the other side. So then that leaves us 56 equals 8W plus 18. Now we're going to subtract 18 to the other side. 56 minus 18 is 38 equals 8W. Finally, we have to divide both sides by 8. That will isolate the variable. So we get W equals 38 over 8. If you look over here, you'll notice that answer is not here. That's because this fraction is not reduced. Both of these numbers are even, so they are divisible by 2. 38 divided by 2 is 19. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So there's your final answer, 19 over 4. I'm going to scroll this up so we can see 7 and 8. Carlos and Maria drove a total of 258 miles in 5 hours. Carlos drove the first part of the trip and averaged 53 miles per hour. Maria drove the remainder of the trip and averaged 51 miles per hour. For approximately how many hours did Maria drive? Round your answer to the nearest tenth if necessary. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Carlos and Maria drove, so this is a rate question. We're talking about rates. We're trying to figure out, based on each other's rates, who drove how far. So we have to set up an equation. When we have two people that are going on the same trip, we know that the total trip is 258 miles. We also know their rates. So we're going to start with Carlos. He drives 53 miles per hour. And I'm going to use H for hour because I don't know how many hours he drove. So that's his rate. Maria's rate then is 51 miles per hour, but I can't use H again. So what we do is we take the total number of hours, which was 5, and we subtract Carlos's hours. So if Carlos drove for 3 hours, 5 minus 3 means Maria drove for 2 hours. Now, you could try the guess and check method here, except if you look over at the answers, we aren't talking about whole hours, so we do need to set up the equation. So again, it's 53 miles per hour, we don't know how many hours, plus the 51 miles per hour, but we have to use 5 minus H because we have to subtract the hours Carlos drove from 5 to get the number of hours Maria drives. And we set it equal to the total number of miles on the whole trip. So setting it up here is definitely the hardest part. 53H plus 51 times 5 is 255? Yeah, 255 minus 51H, and that equals 258. Now we're going to combine our like terms. 53H minus 51H is 2H plus 255, and that equals 258. Now we are going to subtract 255 from both sides. And I'm going to continue my work over here on the right. So now we have 2H equals 3. divide both sides by 2. Sorry, this is really lagging. And h equals 1.5. So your inclination might be to say, oh, well, she drove an hour and a half. Except when we go back to the original problem, h actually represented the number of hours that Carlos drove, and we're asked to find how many Maria drove. So now we need to do 5 minus 1.5, and that gives the answer of 3.5, which is the correct answer for the hours that Maria drove. I'm going to leave that on the screen. Remember, in these videos, feel free to pause if I'm going too fast, or even rewind if you want to watch something again. Number 8 says that Peter is reading a 193-page book. He has read 3 pages more than 1/4 the number, one-fourth the number of pages he hasn't yet read. How many pages has he not yet read? So we have 2 cases here. We have the number he has read and the number he hasn't read. So the number that he's read plus the number he hasn't read, it needs to equal 193. You can use either one of these as the variable. I'm going to use x for the number of pages he hasn't read. He has read 3 pages more than 1/4 of the number he hasn't. So 3 pages more than 1/4 of the number he hasn't read. 3 pages more means we're adding 3. Number of pages he hasn't read yet are x, but it's 1/4 of that. So it's 1/4 x plus 3. That represents the number he has read. So now we have an equation. 1/4 x plus 3 plus x equals 193. So 1/4 plus x, or 1x, is 5/4 x, or 1.25, plus 3 equals 193. We are going to subtract 3 from both sides. That gives us 5/4 x equals 190. I'm going to go ahead and change this to a decimal because it's going to be easier to work with in my calculator. And now we need to divide both sides by 1.25. So 190 divided by 1.25, oops, is 152. Now x in this case did represent the number of pages that he hasn't read, and that's what we were asked to find. If we wanted to know the number of pages that he had read, we would have to go back and plug that answer in. So again, the hardest part I think on some of these is just setting them up. So number 9 is similar to the one up above. Carlos and Maria drove a total of 191 miles in 3.8 hours. Carlos drove the first part of the trip and averaged 49 miles per hour. So that's 49x, or h. Maria drove the remainder. So it's 52, but it's not 52x this time. It's 52 times 3.8 minus x. So we have to take out the number of hours that Carlos drives so we can see the number of hours that Maria drives. So now we need to distribute and solve the equation. 52 times 3.8 is 196.7, so it's 49x plus 196.7 minus 52x equals 191. That's so weird, I'm like writing like a ghost. I need to combine these two. 49 minus 52, that's negative 3x. I also need to subtract 196.7 to the other side, so 191 minus 196.7 is negative 5.7. Divide both sides by negative 3. Negative 5.7 divided by negative 3 is 1.9, so x equals 1.9. And remember what x equals again, that's Carlos. We made Carlos the x. So if Carlos is driving for 1.9 of the hours, we need to take 3.8 minus 1.9, and that will give us the number of hours that Maria drives, which is 1.9. Why does it say 1.6? Let's see what I do wrong. Hang on just a second. I see my mistake. I wrote 196.7. This should have been 197.6. So now when I subtract 191 minus 197.6, I get negative 6.6. So this should be negative 6.6. Sorry about that. Now when you take negative 6.6, we're going to change all of this and this. So negative 6.6 divided by negative 3 is 2.2. There we go. Now we take 3.8 minus 2.2, and we get 1.6. Freaked out for a second, that didn't work out. So again, Maria drove the difference of the 3.8 and the number of miles Carlos drove, which we found to be 2.2. Number 10, this is the last one. A truck traveling at an average rate of 45 miles per hour leaves a rest stop. 15 minutes later, a car traveling at an average rate of 60 miles per hour leaves the same rest stop, traveling the same route. How long will it take for the car to catch up with the truck? So this problem gets set up similar to the last two, except because we're trying to find out when one car will reach another car, their distances here are going to be the same. So instead of before where we were looking at Carlos plus Maria was 191 miles, this time we don't know the difference or the distance, so we're going to set them equal to each other. So we're going to do the truck, then we're going to do the car on the other side. So the truck is traveling at an average rate of 45 miles per hour. We're going to do the distance, the rate times the time, which we don't know, x. The car is 60 miles per hour, but we can't multiply that by x because their time is going to be 15 minutes less. So it's the truck's time minus 0.25. And it's 0.25 because in time, 15 minutes is a quarter of an hour. So the truck is 45x, 45 miles per hour times the time, which we don't know. The car is 60 miles per hour times the truck's rate minus the 15 minutes, the later start the car gets. So we're going to distribute and then solve the equation. So 60x minus 60 times 0.25 is 15, and that equals 45x. So we're going to subtract 60x to the other side. There are multiple ways to solve this. Negative 15x equals negative 15. We're going to divide both sides by negative 15, and we get x equals 1. Remember, x is our time, so we get x equals an hour. If you look over here, though, you don't see an hour as an answer. That's because we were asked about how long the car takes to catch up with the truck. And remember that the car starts 15 minutes later. So 15 minutes less than 1 hour is how long the car is going to drive, so that's 45 minutes. So I'm not sure if maybe you had a plus sign there or if you were thinking 15 minutes longer it takes the car, but because the car's starting later, that means it's only actually going to drive for 45 minutes. So the truck drives an hour, the car drives for 45 minutes, that's when they catch up. Okay, that was a lot. The video again is on YouTube. Pause it, rewind it, play it as many times as you want so you can see how to set these up. You can go back in and do the lesson over, but once you've watched the video, then I will reset the test for you. If you have any questions, as always, shoot me an email. Thanks.